Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Jeremy Weisz is the host of the Inspired Insider podcast and the co-founder of Rise25, a company that helps B2B businesses to launch their podcast. As well as being a great marketing tool, a podcast also has the power to help build your network. Thank you very much for being my guest on the podcast today, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
Now, before we get started, I know that you're actually Dr. Jeremy, aren't you? So tell us what it is you're a doctor of.
Yeah, so I studied biochemistry in undergrad, and I went on to become a chiropractor. My dad suffered with a lot of neck pain, and he went to professionals for years, and nothing really helped him until he finally went to the chiropractor, and after a few short months, he was 100% better. So I saw him go through that transformation, and in high school, I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Okay, and do you do any of that anymore, or have you left all that behind now?
No, I exited my practice a number of years ago, but I started podcasting about 15 years ago. And, when you go to chiropractic school, they teach you how to treat patients, but they don't teach you the marketing and business side. So I actually was going to marketing and internet conferences back in 2006-07, and I stumbled across this. I mean, at the time, it wasn't even called podcasting. It was just like people publishing things online, because most people didn't even know what a podcast was at that time. But I really took to it because I felt that it kind of combined several things that I love, which is learning, professional development, networking, and just giving to people, my relationships, and creating content together. So at that point, by accident, it turned into a separate business, which is Rise25, where we help businesses launch and run podcasts.
Yeah. I feel like in most professions, actually, people are not taught the whole marketing side of things. And then when people do go into running their own businesses, they're like, well, how do I tell people that I'm here and what I do? So I think that's, it's something that we all kind of need a bit of help with, don't you think?
100%. Yeah, it's a big... whatever profession it is, it's definitely needed.
Yeah. So tell me about before Rise25, you and the podcasting, you're making videos, is that right?
Yeah, so I've been doing video interviews with different founders, from the founders of Pixar to P90X to Atari, and I was publishing it across video channels and also the podcast channels early on. So I found a great way to meet amazing people and deliver some value to them.
Yeah. Would you say that you were doing that, as much for yourself as for your audience?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, from a professional development standpoint, I like to ask questions I'm curious about. What's the point of doing it if I'm not learning from it? So I definitely come from it from a standpoint of what am I most interested in, what am I most curious about.
Yeah. And how did you find guests for those video interviews?
I found that, my network of people at the time, and then people organically want to recommend other guests. So my network started referring guests. Now I probably get, 5 to 10 emails a day for Inspired Insider, my podcast, of people wanting to come on or suggesting other people. So it kind of just organically happens.
Yeah. And I guess you were kind of at the beginning of podcasting, really, if you've been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah, back in 2007, 8, 9, I'm sure there were, I don't remember all the people in the landscape, but there were definitely some of the early on people that I was chatting with that now are still doing it today and have big shows. Jordan Harbinger is one that, we talked early on, and he's got a big show of who knows how many downloads, millions of downloads a month, and he has some amazing guests on his show. and just chatting with some of the people in the industry at the time. And mostly I was chatting with people who are in business, interviewing business leaders. So, I mean, obviously there were ones that I wasn't connected with, like if there was a true crime podcast or comedy podcast, it wasn't really my network of people, but more people who were having founders. Another Omer Zenhom was another one, still podcasting today, has a great podcast, and kind of the Pat Flynn's of the world as well.
So do you have any favorite interviewees you can tell us about, any particularly memorable ones?
Yeah, I mean, a couple memorable ones on Inspired Insider. Again, like you were saying, from a professional development standpoint, one of my favorite books is Never Split the Difference. And I had Chris Voss on, who wrote Never Split the Difference. And he's an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. So he tells some of those amazing stories, which are all real life stories that he had to work through. And so after reading the book or listening to the book, I had him on, and we had a fascinating conversation around, again, like, how do you negotiate? I mean, now if someone's heard of the site Masterclass, he teaches negotiation in the Masterclass. On that Masterclass, like Serena Williams teaching tennis, and Steph Curry is teaching basketball. So he's really like best in class, and he told some crazy stories about trying to get hostages back from terrorists. So it was kind of a crazy conversation. Also, the co-founder of Pixar, Alvy Ray Smith, was fascinating. He told some George Lucas stories, some Steve Jobs stories, and just starting Pixar under George Lucas. And he told one story about how they thought they were going to get investment because they, took a lot of technology and people, and they were in a boardroom, and last minute they pulled out. And so they had gotten an offer from Steve Jobs at one point for less. So he tells a story on the way to the airport, driving to the airport. They don't have any funding, and they make the call to Steve Jobs to say, hey, are you still interested? And it's just kind of crazy to hear, now obviously it's a huge, household name.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was just a small startup, and they were trying to make it work.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me, when do you decide that you wanted to help other people to start their podcasts?
I never really decided that, actually, because people just kept coming to me, and I was busy. I was running a practice, and people were asking me, hey, can you help me with some of the strategy? Can you help me with execution? Because I built up a team around me because I was busy and I couldn't do all of the pieces, right? And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to show up, have the conversation, not do anything else, right? And so that's kind of the process I created where, okay, afterwards, created a portal so I can drag the file in there. 2 minutes later, I'm done. And the team will create a full blog post and everything else. But I didn't go out and go, I'm going to create this cool solution. It's just people were asking me to help them. And I like saying yes. I like helping people. So I just started helping people, and then started charging people. So it just kind of organically grew into a business.
Yeah. So how long has Rise 25 been going now?
It's around 10 years. I partnered with, and that's how I met my business partner, John Corcoran, actually through podcasting. And, I was helping people individually. He also has been podcasting for like over a decade. And so we met, and we just thought very, very similarly about just how do we give to other people and help other people. And, then it started, and we started doing some things together, and we teamed up. He has an interesting background as well. He was a speechwriter at the White House under Bill Clinton, and is a lawyer, recovering lawyer. So we had kind of both came from professional services background, and so yeah, it's about 10 years ago right now.
So how does it work? Somebody comes to you with an idea for a podcast. What happens next?
Yeah, someone comes to an idea. People come to us, they've had a podcast for a long time, or they're thinking of starting a podcast, and we always start with the strategy first. And so it's not just about, producing and getting, and a lot of people think, oh, well, how do I get it up? And all of the channels and all the technical stuff. But some of the most important stuff is a foundational strategy. And so we have 5 steps that we kind of talk through with the client to profit with a podcast. And, like I was saying, we are working with B2B podcasts, not true crime or comedy podcasts. So I'll put that caveat in there. But the kind of the 5 things we work through with them is this, from a strategic standpoint, is one, we talk with them and we work through and create a Dream 200. And some people think of a Dream 200 as your ideal clients. We kind of broaden the scope. It could be referral partners, strategic partners. It could be past clients, current clients, future clients, and other people in the industry. And so we kind of map out that Dream 200. The next is kind of once you have the people, and sometimes people aren't focused. The businesses we're talking to don't know necessarily. Maybe they help a lot of different types of companies. So we kind of do talk about, and analyze who their current clientele and past clientele are, so who makes sense. Because we help, someone who's in the luxury food industry, and we help government, right? Those are totally different things.
Yeah.
So we really have to zero in and focus. The second is outreach. Right? So how do you reach out to these people and companies? Some some you don't know. And so we go through kind of the outreach and the best copywriting and messaging and things like that. And then, of course, people want to know about the art and science of producing amazing content. So people will ask about, what tools do I use in technology and all that stuff? And there's so many different things on that end. That's like the popular question, but I'm like, that's not the highest priority in my mind.
Yeah.
And then it's about kind of growing your reach. And we go through, strategies and things to grow the reach. And then the 5th one is really turning guests into partners and real relationships. And that's kind of where the rubber meets the road as far as the longevity goes.
Mm-hmm. So you do this for B2B businesses, but what kinds of sectors are they in? Is it quite varied?
Yeah, we help anywhere from, we have, software companies, again, ones who want to create thought leadership and also network with amazing people in their specific space. We help digital agencies. Actually, digital agencies are great partners of ours because we kind of stick to our individual specialty and we refer out for anything else. So those specialty agencies refer to us. So agencies are great. There's manufacturing companies, anyone who's got a high client lifetime value, who probably with a long sales cycle. There's also, we have a number of companies in M&A. They're buying or selling companies because there's often a long sales cycle, which requires authority. And then there's we have a smattering of, there's doctors' offices and law firms and other businesses that really want to leverage their thought leadership as well.
Yeah. So do you think that any B2B business could potentially have a podcast, and why would you recommend that they have one?
Yeah, I mean, anyone for sure, any business, because, or for me, I look at it as kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? In one 30-minute conversation, that's what we're doing here, right? I mean, we're creating some great content that you can share with your listeners and your audience, and I'll be able to share it with mine as well. So it's like a Swiss Army knife because it's in a 30-minute conversation, you can create amazing thought leadership. It's great for SEO for a business. It's great for relationships, whether it's referrals or, potential clients. Like before the interview, guess what I did? I went to your website and I checked out all the services you offer. So I'm like, okay, when someone needs a voiceover artist, I know who to send them. Before, I didn't know who you were. You didn't know who I was. So it allows me to educate myself and get to know the person. And it's really great from a networking standpoint. I also look at it as a way to introduce other people to each other. So if I have two guests that should be talking, I get to introduce them.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about what your clients are getting from their podcasts, the ones that have been working with Rise 25.
Yeah, I mean, the immediate thing is going back to the Dream 200 is we want to create a predictable referral pipeline. Okay. I mean, they are connecting with potential clients and past clients and things like that. But that's what it's about, because if someone doesn't get ROI from a podcast, they're going to stop doing it. Right. You've been doing it for a long time. It'd be the last thing I ever stopped doing, because it allows me to form great relationships with people in my network. And so that's, really when it comes down to a business, I look at it, okay, predictable referral, because people always say, where do your best clients come from? It's always referrals. Well, how do you do that in a predictable, strategic way? Well, a podcast. And so obviously there's other benefits, long-term benefits like SEO. I will sometimes, because I've been doing it so long and I have publishing 2 to 3 episodes a week for so many years, sometimes I will rank for someone's name and company name. So when someone searches for that company in person, that interview shows up and then people discover that business, right?
Yeah.
And the other one is thought leadership, and people sometimes miss out on that, which is like, how does a company save time, energy, and money? And that goes into creating thought leadership episodes of stuff that they end up repeating over and over. Like every question that we've gotten, Liz, almost every question, we've created an episode, right? So people ask us, like, how do I name my podcast? We have an episode for that. What software and tools do I use for a podcast? We have an episode for that. How do I use podcasting with LinkedIn? We have an episode for that. So people can explore it and they may go, great, this is awesome. I should start doing this. And some of those people will say, these people really know what they're talking about. I'm going to work with them. Well, the same thing goes with any industry.
Yeah. And if there's a business who they're really keen to have a podcast, but they don't have anybody who wants to be the voice of it, nobody wants to actually get behind the microphone, can you help them with that part?
That's a great question. Yes. So I'll be on with someone, and it's not as frequent. Maybe it's like 5% of the time. They're like, well, what if, I'm introverted, I don't want to do a podcast. Yeah. I'm like, well, then you shouldn't do it. But can someone from your team do it? Right. And so we have, sometimes the companies we work with have multiple co-hosts from their company. Maybe it's not always the CEO and founder, or it's someone who's just kind of be the voice who likes doing it. Right. Because I don't want someone to do it if they don't enjoy doing it and talking to people. Yeah. There are companies we work with. We have professional interviewers on staff that will actually do the interviews. Now, this isn't my first recommendation, but if they're insistent, because we want, ideally, if the founder, CEO, or someone from the company is building that relationship. But sometimes we have companies who, listen, I just want you guys are the experts to do it. And so we will do the reach out, get people on the show, host the show, and publish it on their channels. Now, again, we're not saying, hey, we're from Rise 25 necessarily. We're just the host of the show. So that does happen, but I'm not saying it's my first choice, because I'd rather have someone from the company building those relationships.
Yeah, that's for the best, definitely. So we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but how would you say a podcast can help with networking, since networking is the theme of my show?
Yeah, I mean, it really allows someone to have a conversation. Like, if you're busy, I'm busy. If you're like, hey, let's have a get to know you call, right? And, people are busy. They're looking at, well, is this worth my time? I'm not sure. But when you have someone on, it's something that will last forever. And it's also, you're producing a marketing asset with that person, right? And so getting on and recording it is great. And I love, from a relationship standpoint, thinking of how I can give and how I can help the other person. Yeah. Right. And so I'm not going into a call thinking, well, how can I get something, or what am I going to get? I'm like, I go into a call saying, how can I help that person with what they're working on? Who do I know in my network that I can introduce them to? So it allows me to create content. And when I make that introduction, then I can actually send it to the introduction to save both people time because they get to know each other through the episode. So it's just a way, I feel like, a give first mentality. And that's what I love about a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people ask me, why do you do your podcast? And this is one of the things that I say. If I'm at an online networking meeting, let's say, and everyone's sort of using the chat box, rather than me try and sell my services in that chat box, I will say, hey, who wants to be a podcast guest? And people will then talk to me because they want to come on the podcast because, like you say, that gives them content that they can share, give to their audience. And, I will be able to have conversations with people that I wouldn't necessarily have been able to have otherwise.
Totally. It's leading with a give. And that's kind of the mentality that I like to go by. For me, it's a podcast. It's a no-brainer. For you, it's a podcast. It's a great way to give first.
Yeah. I know you're quite keen on LinkedIn too. How do you grow your network via LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. It's, I think, for me, the best B2B networking platform out there.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it's, with myself and clients, for each episode, we'll produce a 30 to 60 second, snippet of the episode, right? And so, again, if someone looks at my LinkedIn, I'm not really talking about myself at all. I'm really just talking about and promoting other people and what they're doing. And so it allows me the episode to go further and make it even easier for the person to share what they're working on. So creating that 30, 60 second snippet, posting on LinkedIn, spreading it across tens of thousands of people that I know on LinkedIn, and it's a great way to network and touch base.
Yeah. So, what do you think the future of podcasting is? Do you feel it's becoming a saturated market or not?
Yeah, people ask. I feel like everyone's starting a podcast, and should I really start one? And I'm like, maybe you shouldn't. And it'll just leave less competition for everyone else. But, I say it kind of tongue in cheek, but, I think I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago and they were saying, Jeremy, should I start a podcast? Or everyone I know is starting a podcast. I'm like, first of all, most podcasts don't get through even more than 10 episodes. Okay. Yeah. And second of all, if someone said, well, all the people in your industry have a website, would you still have a website? Of course you'd have a website because that shares your business, your thought leadership. So just because everyone else has a podcast doesn't mean there's not room for another podcast. And people are kind of thinking of it, Liz, as far as an audience perspective. But, when I think of it as getting their thought leadership out in the universe, networking with the people they want to network with and share with the people stories that they want to share, it makes perfect sense, right? And even from the standpoint of, when they're coming out with their own podcast, I've had guests on my show. They've been on, let's say, 15 different podcasts. If you go back and listen, which, I do a lot of research, every single one of them is different pretty much, right? Because the host has different things they're interested in. They're different things they're asking questions about. So just because it's the same guest does not mean it's going to be the same content every time either.
Yeah, absolutely. So one final question then, Jeremy. If people are interested in finding out more about you and Rise 25 and how you can help them create their podcast, what is the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, you can go to rise25.com and we have some content on there. We have a video on there that talks about how our thoughts on getting ROI with a podcast. And my podcast, Inspired Insider, people can check out. And, there's a lot if you search podcast in the search bar, all the episodes I've done about podcasting come up. So you can get some free resources there and check out any other guests too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for being my guest on my podcast today.
Thank you. This is great.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.